Quiet quitting was just the beginning, and then I retired. I used to think that my coworkers who stopped caring, the ones who wouldn't work weekends, who did just enough to get by, and who seemed to have mentally checked out while still showing up for work. And then I realized all those people at work who stopped caring about promotions, they refused to take weekend calls, and they just did the bare minimum, they weren't being lazy. They were preparing for this exact moment, and I had no idea what was coming. Hi, I'm RJ, I'm 63, and I'm retired. I spent decades in the corporate world dealing with all the pressures, the politics, the constant need to prove myself. And while I may not look like your typical retiree, I've been through the same transition that millions of people are about to face or have already faced. And here's what I've discovered. Quiet quitting was actually preparing me for something much bigger than I realized. If you're in your 40s, 50s, or 60s and you're thinking about what comes next, this video is actually for you. Welcome to the UnRetired, where you're not done, but you're finally doing what you want. If you're over 40 and starting to think about planning for retirement, or you're newly retired and you want content that speaks to our reality, hit the like button. It helps more people find videos like this. Okay, let's dive in. Let's be honest about what quiet quitting really is. It's not laziness, it's more like your soul trying to tell you something. When you stop caring about that promotion, when you refuse to work weekends, and kind of when you start setting those boundaries, you're essentially practicing retirement. You're discovering what happens when work stops being your primary source of identity and validation. The thing is, most people think retirement will be this smooth transition from busy to blissful. But if you struggled with quiet quitting, that feeling of what's the point, then retirement is going to hit you like a ton of bricks. Let me talk about what I call the validation void. During my own career, I was hired to join companies, run them, and help sell them. Every few years, I'd have one of these natural breaks, what I'd call a mini retirement, where I'd take 6 to 12 months off between projects. During those breaks, I thought I understood what retirement would feel like. I was totally wrong. When I finally retired for real 3 years ago, the first thing that hit me wasn't relief. It was silence. No work emails, no one calling with problems. No one needed my input. And man, that was weird. And that's when I realized something shocking. I didn't know how much my daily validation came from being needed at work. To highlight this, in week 2 of my retirement, I found myself checking my phone constantly. But for what? The dopamine hit of being important had vanished almost overnight, and that led to what I call the identity crisis. Here's where quiet quitting should have prepared me, but it didn't quite go far enough in my case. At a party 3 months into retirement, someone asked me the question that every working person takes for granted. What do you do? Well, I got asked that, I froze. For 30 years, I always had an answer. And now, I don't know, I work out, I read, I exist, I guess I play golf, I watch Netflix at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. My job just didn't pay the bills. Over the years, it became what defined me. And when that's gone, I'm left with this fundamental question: who am I when I'm not at work? Who am I when I'm not in my career? That identity that I carried for decades, the problem solver, the decision maker, the person that people came to for all the answers. Well, it didn't come with me into retirement. And this is what they don't tell you about quiet quitting. It's not just about setting work boundaries. It's about slowly disconnecting from work as your primary source of self-worth. But most people like myself never complete that process fully before they retire. So before we continue, let me ask you, what was your identity before retirement? Please drop a comment below. I'm curious to see who you were before this transition. Sometimes sharing it helps us remember who we really are underneath all those years of work. Okay, let's get back into this. Then came the guilt. Oh, the guilt. 3 months in, I felt totally guilty for sleeping in till 7:30, only 7:30. But that's just, kind of slagging for somebody who used to get up at 6 all the time. I was guilty for watching ESPN at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I was guilty for not being productive. And what's crazy is I had more money than I needed. I was trying to play golf regularly. I was traveling some. I was spending real time with my daughter and my family, doing all the things that I used to postpone for work. But emotionally, I kind of felt hollow. I kind of felt useless. It was as if everything I had built over 30 years, my experience, my insight, my professional identity, it had been packed away in a box and shoved into the back of a closet. In other words, it felt forgotten. And that sense of irrelevance, it hit me harder than I ever imagined. There's a dangerous myth out there, the idea that you can just check out and everything will be fine. And believe me, it is dangerous. A study published in the National Center for Biotechnology Information found that when work's role and structure vanish, many retirees experience what researchers call an existential vacuum, a feeling of aimlessness or emptiness. A USC Dornsife study found that for unemployed men, mental health improves significantly after 50, not because of aging or more leisure time, but because retirement becomes socially acceptable. And let me tell you, I don't see this as a weakness at all. This is just a natural body response when the things that gave you life structure and meaning suddenly disappear. Now, here's something that really got to me, and it connects to why quiet quitting feels kind of strange. I used to live life at 90 miles an hour, meetings back to back, decision firing, rapid fire, always 3 steps ahead of the current moment. In retirement, heck, I'm moving at like 5 miles an hour, and it felt kind of weird. It felt wrong, actually. I was walking through my neighborhood one morning, really walking, not rushing to my car, not checking my phone, and I realized the jarring contrast of just taking a casual walk. The vacation mindset that you get when you think about retirement, it literally only lasts about 2 weeks. After that, you need something else. Retirement needs its own rhythm, its own tempo. Nobody teaches you how to find that. As one Redditor described retirement perfectly, I was disappearing slowly. Life went from being full of motion to suddenly being quiet. And that quiet, which felt like rest at first, eventually started to feel like absence. But then came the breakthrough. Here's what I learned and what I'm grateful for about all the mini retirements that I had experienced throughout my life and career. The retirees I've met who thrive don't see retirement as an end to purpose. They see it as freedom to pursue deeper, more meaningful purpose. I had to accept a new identity. I'm not used to be anything. I'm not living in the past tense. I'm becoming somebody new, someone whose worth isn't tied to productivity or professional achievement. And this is what quiet quitting was actually preparing me for, learning to find meaning and identity outside of the work validation. I didn't try quiet quitting myself, and I wish I had. But looking back, I think I would have benefited from easing out of my work identity instead of dropping it cold. A little intentional disengagement might have made the emotional transition to retirement a bit smoother. I discovered that retirement doesn't just give you time, it permits you to remember who you were before you became what you did. I started realizing that the silence after retirement, it creates space for new relationships, new purposes, new versions of yourself that you never had time to discover or explore when you were busy climbing the corporate ladder. Okay, if you're navigating this transition or you're thinking about what retirement could look like for you, please hit the like and subscribe button. We're building a community of people who want to approach this next chapter intentionally. So if you're quietly quitting right now, or you've already started that mental checkout process, understand this. You're actually doing something incredibly valuable. You're beginning to separate your self-worth from your work output. But don't stop there. Start asking yourself now, what would you do if work wasn't the primary way you proved your value? What parts of yourself have you ignored while you've been building your career? Because retirement isn't about having enough money, but it's about having enough time to fill your days meaningfully. The quiet quitting was just the beginning. The real journey starts when you walk away completely.